Next is education, which is our most recent center opened 2 years ago, and Liv Finne is our director of our education center. So Liv, you want to set? Or is it?
I don't know how you do it.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, let's go to the start.
Let Rich read.
Okay, Rich is sorry.
Good back.
Back one. Well, can I go to the beginning? Yes, that's why it's upside down.
And I would suggest maybe ask questions during these presentations, so we make sure you get your questions rather than wait until to the end.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. Right?
We have a half an hour to dedicate.
No, you have we have 25 minutes.
25 minutes to dedicate to education. So I'm here to serve and help you. So please interrupt me if you have a question. I'm happy. This is not as overwhelming as it may appear to you. And what I would say as prospective legislators, don't forget to rely on your common sense when it comes to education, because common sense will get you through. There are a lot of terms, and I'm here to help you. Please call me when you get elected. If you don't understand something, I will explain to you. It's not that bad. Okay, we are handing out two different handouts. So you will have a copy of the PowerPoint that I'm going to give you, so don't worry about taking notes. All the numbers are in the PowerPoint. And we're also handing, and that will give you a broad overview of what we're putting into education, what we're getting out of education, what the current reform plans are in the state, what has been tried at the federal level, and what we propose to do to fix it. And then this green handout is a summary of our education reform plan, which some of you may have seen. We have a full study with all the footnotes at the office, which you can get. It's flying off the shelves. We have to keep ordering new ones because people are so interested in it. Let's start in the beginning. The one concept my name is Liv Finne. I'm the director for education at the Washington Policy Center. I forgot to say that. Okay. And I am here to help you understand this. And we've been studying this for some time now. We've come out with an education reform plan, and this is what we observe is the situation in Washington State. The principals, the most important leaders in our schools, have absolutely no authority or power to lead our schools to improve. They control less than 5% of their budgets. They can't control who is surrounding them on their teacher staff. They do not control their educational program. They've been reduced to the level of a building manager. And so in the last round of budget cuts, guess who was let go at the highest rate? The principals, because they're the least important and the most expensive. That has to be changed in the future. We need to empower them. Yes?
So who's controlling that? The school board?
The school districts and, no, wait, first the legislature. And the legislature is trying to control them even more so with every passing year. So I couldn't bring all the materials that there are, but the rules that have been written by the legislature controlling the schools weigh 15 pounds and are this high. So that's the main culprit here. Unwinding, pulling off these ropes would be the best thing you could do in the next 50 years. Let's do it in the next 5 years for the sake of our kids. So that's the main culprit, and then the next culprit are the school board, the centralized school boards who try to control, micromanage what is happening in the schools. And they are capturing a great percentage of the dollars that we're putting into our schools. So we're about to do a step, well, this is, I was just looking at the Seattle School District budget for 2010 and 11, and they have made a fatal error there. They have shown how much money is going to each school per student. I advise you to go to the Seattle School District budget website. It's right there for everyone to see. And I'm going to put a little paper together showing that even though the school district receives $12,724 per pupil in operating expenses to educate the students, only about between $6,000 and $7,000 per pupil is reaching each and every one of the schools.
Wow. Is that down from what before? It was around 9,000, 9,500 before?
In terms of the amount of money that's getting to the district,
Right.
yes. I mean, we have increased the amount of money into the schools tremendously over the last 10 years. So when people say that there's no money for education, it's only because they're expecting more and more and more and more money, and they're saying, oh my goodness, our projected increase has been cut. I can show you this, I'm going to show you the chart, so I can prove this to you. Yes.
Do you have any information that shows any relationship to the special needs increase in schools today?
Yes, there's been huge increase in special needs, and that Seattle School District budget will show you in the school how much is being spent per pupil for special needs.
And is there a comparison to the federal dollars that are involved?
There's, it gives you, in that Seattle School District budget, we will give you the total amount that's coming from the state special education funds and the federal special education funds. And it's quite amazing to see, because it is very, very high numbers. I don't have them at my fingertips, but you all know this. We're spending a tremendous amount of money in special education to meet the needs of a very small portion, 12% of our population. Yes.
When you say reaching the schools, is that the same as saying it reaches the classroom?
It reaches the school. When you
Okay.
get to the classroom, that would be another whole analysis.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, we've been saying less than 59 cents of every dollar reaches the classroom, and that's because that's the first go-round of our analysis, and that's taken from the activity, from the teaching activity apportionment reporting for the schools. And that, I think, is an overestimate. I think that less than half of the dollars are actually getting to the classroom. So
How does that compare to the rest of the country?
it's typical.
It's
typical. It's typical. We're doing what everyone else is doing. Everyone else is doing it badly, so are we. Less than 43% of the public school employees in the nation are actually classroom teachers. In our state, we're a little less bad. We're about 47% of our public school employees are actually classroom teachers. Yes.
So, okay, so 59 or 50%, what should be our goal?
80%.
80%. And then that 20% should cover the mandated transportation issues that are put on the schools and stuff. That should take care of all transportation.
Yes.
And-
We could redefine what transportation is anyway.
And then that 20% should also cover all the maintenance in the buildings?
Yes. Well, no, maintenance of yes. I don't know. Can't answer that. Can't answer that, honestly.
Okay, so what we have to do is, we need to know.
Well, there's capital, there's a
Right.
separate budget for capital in new buildings, but then we are maintaining within operating expenses. I mean, in the Seattle School District budget, I just looked at it yesterday, it's $556 million for Seattle School District operating expenses. $305 million gets to the schools. Of the balance, 40% is spent on maintaining the schools. Of the balance, what's the difference between 556 and 305? About 250. So about 40% of that's spent on maintaining the schools. If you could contract, those are all run by unions, of course, and they're very high and very expensive. So if you were to do what we think you should do, and that is allow the dollars to follow the child all the way to the school or the parent's choice, then you would allow the principal the decision-making power and the budgetary power to decide who is going to be his custodian. You could and this could be applied to food services, which of course is taking a huge portion of the school budget, and other services. And I think we can really reduce costs. Yes?
But that has one flaw. When you decentralize,
Yes.
what I've seen, because I'm a school board director,
Yes.
and watch 27 different schools have 27 different kinds of math books. So when a kid moves across the town, all of a sudden they're messed up on math. So
That whole argument is exaggerated. Only a smaller percentage that is being promulgated right now is moving from school to school, and that shows up the flaw in the system that the school district is not holding accountable the principal for performance, because of course he can't be held accountable because he doesn't have the tools he needs to succeed. Right? How can in all good faith the school superintendent that your school board hires, how can he go to principal number A and say, your math students are really doing badly on the WASA. You are going to either fix your scores or you're losing your job. Nobody's doing that in the state of Washington. Nobody's holding anybody accountable in the state of Washington for student performance. So, because the principal in all with all the reasons says, well, I can't control my budget, I can't decide who are my teachers, I can't decide what math curriculum to use. In fact, in Seattle, they have to use a proven failed curriculum in math. Okay, so that's what the situation is.
Dictated by the school board.
I'm sorry?
Dictated by the school board.
Dictated by the school board and the school superintendent. So it's a broken system because there is no way, because we've given up trying to hold the people who are responsible accountable for raising student achievement.
How much of those costs are attributable to the legislature?
I asked that question of somebody recently. I haven't analyzed that.
Right.
I mean, that would be a good
And
exercise.
you talked about the,
The
how many
mandates.
pounds of
The mandates.
regulations.
You know, it's a simple thing when you get down to it. The education depends upon the ability of the teacher to teach the student, right?
Sure.
So we don't have, so this book that I told you about, like a quarter of it is the regulations around teacher credentialing, which guarantee that we are not getting the best teachers in our schools. Yes?
I would also throw in from my 30 years experience in the classroom that bureaucracy and paper pushing is a lot of the expense that doesn't get to the classroom.
Yes, and so
Both federal
when
and
you
state
ask the
level.
question, how much are these, a lot, okay? I'd say a lot of the cost is the responsibility of the legislature. And in one of our education reform principles, the first one is with the principal in charge. The second one is to give parents choice over where they send their kids to school because that will drive improvement. And the third one is to allow the teachers to teach. Now, this is not rocket science. This is just common sense. Yes.
Yeah, sure. Quick example.
Yes.
As a science teacher, I went to my principal and asked for hands-on material so that I could teach students experiment processes.
Yes.
Yet I had to write a grant to get it because it wasn't in the principal's budget.
Yes. Because nobody can, if you could put the principal in charge of his budget in actual dollars, it's actually being done across the United States in 15 large school districts. And my very last slides here will show you what dramatic improvements have been resulting for students as a result. Baltimore City Schools, it's amazing what they're doing there. And they have minority population, poor kids, the hardest and most challenging group to teach.
So then what's the role of the school board in your concept?
Oh, well, you have to, probably, the role of the school board is to hire the superintendent, make the superintendent accountable for keeping the principals accountable. That's the role of the school board, and they should stay off of all the detailed, micromanaging they're trying to do with the superintendent. If the superintendent doesn't achieve results, they're out of there. New superintendent. And I think the school board should get educated about finance, because what I hear is incredible. They have to understand that giving the local leader control over his dollars is the way forward. That is what private business has done the last 40 years. What they have done is decentralized control of the local manager. That's why we have the best, Starbucks units here, and the local offices are excellent, because you can't achieve excellence when you have centralized control. So I'm going to zip through these slides. Okay, I'm concerned about that. What time? When do we start? 9:15. Okay, I've got like 10 minutes.
Go.
Okay, here's the budget numbers. It's very easy. About 1 million students, we're spending $10 billion, and it's $10,000 per student. Okay, that's easy to remember. All right, and this is the actual OFM piece of paper to prove to you I'm not making these numbers up. Okay, and here is the, these are all taken from OSPI tables, and here, these are important to see how we keep spending more and more money. Look, the money's $6 billion, $10 billion now. And the rate of increase, well, these are the same, aren't they? See, this chart shows you how much we're spending. We care about our kids.
When it says general fund expenditures,
That's
doesn't
operating.
necessarily include all expenditures.
No,
does
there's
it?
another third you have to add to it.
Do you have these local levies and that sort of thing?
This is general fund is just operating expenses. Then if you add another, and that's $10,000 per student. You add another, if you add all funds, which include the debt fund and the capital fund and the AWS, Associated Student Body Fund, you get to another $3,000 per student, almost. $13,000 per student, and from all funds. So here we see that here's the rate of enrollment increase, and here increased expenditure per pupil. You see, we're spending a lot more than the need would warrant. Because what's happened is we've added many non-teaching credentialed personnel to the school district. And that's why we have so many people in the schools there. And here we have past efforts at education reform, 1993. You can all read this later, but basically this set up the standards-based teaching and the WASL to test to whether or not the children are meeting those expectations. In our full education reform plan, I listed, it's unfortunately not in your copy, but at the appendix of the original, the full plan, there's a list of the 87 education reform plans, the Band-Aid approach I call it, over $5 billion in attempts to improve the schools. And I'll show you what the results of it. The results are, most of the kids are able to read, although 20% are still not reading. I think that's pretty significant. And half are proficient in math. It's a disaster, I tell you. In this state, we do not know how to teach math. The people are pulling their hair out and they say, we can't understand it. And I can tell you why. It's because we've been teaching this reform math, fuzzy math. And the teachers all think it's the best thing. One teacher I heard in Bellevue School District said, oh, it's, you know, when you subtract from, when you carry, you can start, you don't have to start from the right and go to the left. You can start from the right and go to the, I mean, you don't have to start from the right and go to the left. You can start from the left and go to the right. That's inquiry learning. So here are the results. You see, they're flat. We have poured money into the schools and we're getting the same, and I predict the same flat results will continue. This is the national test, the gold standard for testing. It's hard to rely on the WASL, but this you can rely on. This shows that we are getting flat results. High school graduation rates, there's no excuse for this. 30% are dropping out of high school. There is a great program called AVID that only costs $12,000 to $15,000 per school that has been showing results in some of the school districts in the Puget Sound area. But of course they can't use it because they can't get it because they can't control their money because all the money is allocated to certain spending slots. If you were to allow the principal to control his budget, he could do that. Yes.
The Everett and Mill Creek High
Yes.
School have done a significant reduction in.
Yes,
And
using AVID.
they used Abbott.
Yes.
I mean, it's a magnificent accomplishment.
Yes, it's possible with focused people.
Real briefly, what is that program, how does that program work?
Well, it's the same. They assign advisors to kids. It's all about establishing bonds with children.
Can I explain it real quick?
Yes, sure.
It basically takes the students who are on the cusp of failing
Yeah.
and gives them assistance so that they can succeed with
Right.
one-on-one tutoring.
Right. It focuses on the problem kids and helps them up. Okay, so here's some more.
ABID.
AVID, yeah. Here's some more depressing numbers. The State Board of Education assessed the schools on a better matrix than we have elsewhere, and they identified 70,000 students are stuck in persistently low achieving schools. Basically we have a mediocre school system. 4% are exemplary, of the schools are exemplary, 32% are good, all the rest are C's or worse. And that's what you'd expect with a monopoly. A mediocre system, 1/3 dropout, and then the remedial rates. I mean, the proof that the schools are not doing well in K through 12 are in these remedial rates in colleges. If you go to a four-year university, 37% of the schools have, the students have to take remedial courses in reading, math, or writing. That's the four-year universities. If at the community colleges, the number is higher, for 52%. It's really bad. And then we're ranking very low, and now statements like this are being made that by government agencies that public education officials are producing a generation of students less educated than their parents. And this shows what we're up against. The other countries in the nation, in the world, are educating their students. And they're doing much better than us. And we are facing problems, competing with them.
And what would you say the essential differences between foreign schools and our schools? That they get good results and we don't?
Well,
Capitalize.
I have heard that in Japan, for example, the proportion of teachers to support staff is 4-to-1. Ours is 1-to-1. They're very focused and determined, and they have a whole different, they're trying to catch up with us. So they're focused, and they demand results of their teachers. They have a lot of them, they're much smaller. It's a difficult thing to compare this United States to Finland. Finland is a homogeneous country made up of one type of person generally, and they can command and control it because it's only 4 to 6 million people. It's a different model. We don't have that kind of model. We have to think about the individuals that we are. Anyway, how are we doing?
Just one
Yes.
comment that I'd like to make. I sit on a school board also. 87% of our budget is towards salaries.
Yes.
We have 13% of what you would call discretionary income that goes to facilities, that goes to
Yes.
food services,
Yes.
any special education funds that aren't covered. The feds and the state cover up to 12%, and I'm sure you were going to touch on that. The
Yes.
12%. So you say there's been an increase in special education children. Yes, there has. And it's funny that everybody's,
Yes.
all school districts, special education programs stand at about 12%. Ironic that that's what they pay for, and that's what you have.
Yes.
There are a couple districts that are higher than that, Issaquah, for example, because people have come to it because they have a great program. Now it's overwhelmed and underfunded. But so you have 13% that covers everything from curriculum to, you know, maintaining a building. What is your proposal? I mean, you haven't even gone into the WEA. You haven't talked about that. And I'd like to say that there are some school districts that have brought student learning into teacher contracts. And I'd like to say our district is one of them, which is the Enumclaw School
Great.
District, Lake Washington, and Vashon Island. Only 3 districts in the state that have become, started to embed that into teacher contracts. I know that Seattle has a really tough time with that. But anyway, just question, how, the WEA.
Well, I'll tell you, in this last legislative session, the big issue was the Race to the Top bill that the governor was putting out to try to win these a portion of the federal funds. And they made a deal with the union. The WEA basically wrote the bill and wrote out all the student learning provisions. All of us that came down to testify, you need for teacher evaluations, you need to tie student learning as 50% of the criteria for evaluating teachers, and they just brushed us off. Or you go away, go away, go away. And a Democrat tried to introduce a charter school bill and didn't even get a hearing. So that's what the deal is there.
So people think that the legislature has given all these unfunded mandates, which is true, that school districts have approximately 13% to pay for after they pay these teacher salaries first. So you have this 13% to pay for everything else, and there's a point there.
Okay, I just did, if you look at my blog yesterday, I just wrote, I didn't get it up here, but I did an analysis of the hiring patterns of the schools over the statewide over the last 10 years, and they do not parallel student enrollment. They parallel the growth in state revenue. When the state revenue drops a little, they drop some of they let go some of their people. So it's a question of reducing the schools are overstaffed with non-teachers in all these roles. Non-teacher credentialed personnel, psychologists, counselors, nurses, math specialists, coaches, all that sort of, those people are taking up 1/3 of the budget. And you can control that. You can say, sorry. Okay, are we done?
I just take 2 questions.
2 more
and
parts?
wrap up, yeah.
Great.
Or might take,
Sorry, thank you for helping.
May take those 4 questions and answer just real briefly.
Okay, great.
The big question we're gonna get out, which I hear every day, is that, well, we're 37th in the country as far as per pupil spending, and that's the reason why we're failing in all of these things. If we only put more money into the system, we do better. How do you respond to that?
Well, if that's true, then 10 years ago, we would have started seeing some improvements, because we've been putting more money in the system, 60% increase per pupil spending in the last 10 years. The whole issue of money allows the debate to be stuck on a dime. They control the argument when you talk about money, because there'll never be enough money. What you can do is say to them, I don't think you should even discuss money. You say, let's talk about education reform. There's no new money. We're talking about dropping money. We have to figure out what to do within our existing resources. Let's change and improve the way we spend what we already have. This whole issue of money, you could just say all the rest of the states are spending money badly too. I mean, increasing, there is no correlation between more per pupil spending and higher student achievement. I can prove it to you. You can do that across the state of Washington. You can do that across the state of the United States. There's no correlation between per pupil spending and improved student achievement. 2 more.
How about the correlation between the rise in immigrants who don't speak the language and the
That's
difficulty
an
schools?
excuse. That is an excuse because that educators make that it's more difficult. Okay, so make your days longer, and then the union is a problem here. Because if you have a population of students that is difficult to educate, then wouldn't you expect that you would have to spend longer days educating them, or longer school years, or more summer school for them?
Well,
But that is a problem. That's where we get tied up with the collective bargaining agreement. So the best thing you can do is to.
I'm referring to the third that you cited about staff that's not certified that are having to
Yes.
be brought into the district
Yes.
and paid.
But I just think they need to work harder with the staff they have. Last question.
What about early learning and the role in improving results?
Okay, I think that for a small proportion of very poor, disadvantaged, maybe minority students, that may be a possibility. However, the studies that they're using to support that, I did an analysis of this, are very, very expensive programs that are 3 studies out of 50 studies that showed results over time. See, typically the results fade out because they get put into a poor school. You see, so giving a 3-year-old a tremendous preschool experience isn't going to get him to get to algebra by 8th grade. So what you really need is to focus on kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade. In this state, we have social promotion, where the kids are allowed to move along. It's outrageous, so I'm being told to stop. But
All right.
I'm very happy to talk to you, and